I listened with interest to what the Minister had to say about this. She informed the House that such burning as will be done in March and such hedge cutting as will take place in August will be done subject to very strict conditions. But where are the conditions? If you look at the proposed legislation, this House has no input into fixing what the conditions actually are. If there are no conditions set out, then this House will be in a position that it can do nothing to retrieve the situation. And I would have thought that the very first thing that we should do, bearing in mind what has just been said now by the last speaker, is to differentiate between on-road hedges and off-road hedges for starters, because the road safety argument only goes so far. The great majority of hedgerows in Ireland are off-road hedgerows, and the arguments that are being made in relation to road safety simply don't apply there. The second thing is that I noticed that in the proposal, insofar as it relates to burning in March, it's in such part or parts of the state as may be specified in the regulations. But if you go to the subsection 2 of the proposed section, you find that the hedge cutting, there's no capacity to limit it to any part of the state at all, the implication being that it will apply everywhere. So this pilot scheme that we're being told about is a 26-county pilot scheme, which strikes me as an odd thing to do if you were really just interested in researching the matter to extend it to all 26 counties with a view to working out what the consequences of it were. The other thing is it's described as a 2-year pilot scheme. The way that the Act is, or the bill is proposed, it seems to me that it's not simply just a 2-year pilot scheme. It could be a permanent part of the law of the land, provided it got annual renewal by the houses of the Oireachtas. And I don't think that that really amounts. That couldn't be described as a pilot scheme, a perpetual pilot scheme everywhere across Ireland for the month of August. Seems to me to be a contradiction in terms, without stretching language too far and without using language in an inflammatory way. The point that occurs to me is that the Minister is seeking power to make regulations subject to such conditions or restrictions specified in the regulations to ensure the protection of fauna and flora in relation to burning. And in relation to hedge cutting in August, it's subject to such conditions or restrictions specified in regulations made by the Minister in relation to hedgerow husbandry, management or maintenance to protect fauna or flora. So the real question is there any direction given in this bill to what restrictions would be there? I mean, how do you say, supposing you want to protect bird life in a hedgerow, what do you do? Do you say to a farmer, the regulations provide that you should inspect it carefully for nests before you start work? I mean, who's going to be there in the field watching that operation to check was that complied with? And how will it be? How will we know? How would anybody know whether it was or was not complied with, unless there's some busybody staring through the hedgerow trying to see what's happening on the other side of a ditch? It's all very well to say that the Minister may specify in regulations conditions or restrictions in order to protect fauna or flora, but that really doesn't assist us very far in the matter at all. Another point that occurred to me, and I am sympathetic to farmers who want to keep their land properly maintained, and who want to. I'm always surprised. I have a small peasheen of land attached to my house in Roscommon, and I'm always amazed by the extent to which the hedgerows shoot out and expand constantly unless they are disciplined, so to speak. But therefore, I do sympathise with any farmer who wants to keep the square footage of his fields under cultivation from being encroached upon by by hedgerows which are uncontrolled. But the question that I kept asking myself listening to the debate so far is, why is it so important that the cutting takes place in August rather than September? The point was made that farmers use roads and take their machines onto roads and want to do it in conditions of safety. If there was a differentiation between on-road hedges or hedgerows and off-road hedgerows, I could appreciate the sense of that. But I can't really see now. Maybe there's some point I'm missing about agriculture, but I can't really see why the month of September isn't just as good as the month of August to carry out hedge cutting off-road, to put it at its very least. And since the vast majority of hedges are off-road, it seems to me that the Minister could indicate some willingness, A, to make a differentiation between on-road hedgerows and off-road hedgerows, and to consider whether it really is necessary to have off-road hedgerows cuttable in the month of August, when, as we know, there is a very considerable amount of wildlife and bird life at risk from such activities. And the last thing I want to say is, it is, and I've noticed this myself in relation to my own boundaries, it is a bit surprising when the county councils and contractors come up the road. They seem to create quite a deal of spectacular damage to the hedgerows, but their machines may be crude, but in the end, you know, within one growing season, it's all back to normal. You don't really notice the extent of the damage done. Just wanted to add that in to show a bit of balance. But I'm unhappy with the idea that there is no real assurance to this House in asking us to give the Minister these powers as to what protections she really could put in place to protect flora and fauna. I'm unhappy that the bill doesn't differentiate between on-road hedge cutting necessary for road safety and off-road hedge cutting, which is purely for land management. And I'm unhappy that no explanation has really been given as to why off-road hedge cutting can't be done in September, and why it has to be done in August, and why it is that August, as far as I'm concerned, is a busy period for farmers, and why they would set to on their own off-road hedges escapes me. I don't believe it. I don't believe most farmers would do that in the month of August, and certainly I think the protection for wildlife under the present situation is no major intrusion on their right to use their land in a proper and effective way.
Thank you, Senator.